My stay in the Columbia River Gorge was over, and it was now time to move west to the Washington coast and the Pacific Ocean. My plan was to spend one day and one night around the Cape Disappointment area and then move north for 7 days on the Olympic Peninsula. It would be a 145-mile trip to Long Beach, my first destination for the day. Here I planned on taking the Jeep for its first drive on a beach. Later in the day, and as close to sunset as made sense, I would do some photography of the 2 Cape Disappointment lighthouses. I would end my day some 33 miles north at a KOA camp in Rialto Bay. Being a Saturday, my camping options were limited, and the campground at Cape Disappointment was fully booked more than a month ago. My route would take me along the Washington side of the Columbia River before crossing at the Lewis and Clark Bridge into Oregon near Longview, Washington. I would continue traveling along the northern border of Oregon on State Highway 30 for about 45 miles until reaching the port city of Astoria. Here, I would cross back over the Columbia River on the 4-mile-long Astoria-Megla Bridge back into Washington. Upon reaching the Washington side, I was struck with how much the area felt like Cape Cod back on the East Coast, a place I spent many summers. It immediately felt both familiar and comfortable. It wouldn't be long before reaching the town of Long Beach. I was once again struck by a familiar feeling. This place reminded me of a mixture of Falmouth on Cape Cod and Hampton Beach in southern New Hampshire. And accurately claimed the longest beach in the world, Long Beach is actually the longest beach on a peninsula in the world, stretching 28 miles. It is also a Washington state highway with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I entered the beach at the Clifton Beach entrance. After airing down my tires, I drove along the beach for about 3.5 miles. Given how nice the weather was, I eventually parked the Jeep on the beach, got out my camp chair, and soaked up the sun while enjoying the sight of the beautiful Pacific Ocean. After about an hour, I got back into the Jeep and headed for the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse. This is the southern lighthouse, which guides ships into the mouth of the Columbia River. The best sight lines were from Waikiki Beach, a wonderfully secluded horseshoe-shaped sand beach with cliffs on one side and a rock sea wall littered with large sections of tree drift on the other. Due to the fast-approaching clouds and a throng of tourists at Bell's Viewpoint for the northern lighthouse, this would be the only lighthouse I would photograph. My campground for the night was on the ocean, and I had direct access to it. It was low tide, and at low tide the area was simply long swaths of mudflaps. Walking down to the beach, I passed several groups of people coming back with buckets of steamer clams. This was a prime clam digging area. Today I would make the 128-mile drive north for what was planned to be a 7-day exploration of the Olympic Peninsula. However, given the weather forecast, I was already on notice that a change to some of my plans, at least the timing of things, was likely. Today I would head first to Ruby Beach and later to Second Beach. Although I wanted to do a sunset photo shoot, that wasn't looking possible for the next 2 days because of rain. Instead, I would settle for whatever I could capture. Then I would visit the Hoh Rainforest in the National Park and Rialto Beach. Next, I would head further north to visit Cape Oliver, the westernmost point in the lower 48, and to Cape Flattery, the northwesternmost point in the lower 48. I would then move easterly to the north side of the national park. First, I would visit both Seoul Duke and the Merrimere Falls. Then, I would head up onto Hurricane Ridge, as well as visit the town of Port Angeles, before heading towards Kingston to catch the ferry over to Edmonds. Today would be a washout. No second beach, as its access via the Native American reservation town of La Push was closed due to COVID. Instead, I would use the day to get some laundry done and get a few supplies in the town of Forks. But first, I would go out and get a good breakfast. Later, I would simply hang around camp for the day. The good news was that the rain had stopped and the sun was working hard to come out. This would be a perfect day to visit the Hoh Rainforest, and that was my first destination. This was a photography excursion. I was excited to photograph the moss-covered old-growth trees. I would hike two easy trails, the Hall of Moss Trail and the Spruce Nature Trail. Needless to say, I couldn't go 30 feet without taking a picture. No more words are necessary. My next stop was Rialto Beach, and given the good weather, it was busy. Rieldo Beach is another beautiful beach noted for grand sea stacks located about 1.4 miles north of the beach entrance. Again, hoping for a late afternoon or sunset photo, I was prepared to wait amongst the scattered wood drifts to get my pictures. Upon hiking down the beach to the sea stacks, I scouted my compositions and sat back and soaked up the warm afternoon sunshine. However, as the Olympic Peninsula is noted to do, the clouds which started way out over the water's horizon crept inland. Even though I was forced to take my photographs earlier than anticipated, it was still a very good day. My plan today was to first visit Cape Oliva and then Cape Flattery at the most northwestern tip of the peninsula. But plans are meant to be broken, and this one would too. You see, later in the day, after driving virtually the whole way, I would learn that once again, because of COVID, the Makah tribe had shut down access to Cape Flattery. My day began with a 54-mile drive to Ozette on what was again a damp, cool day. Here I would find the Cape Oliva Trail, a 3.6-mile trail that would take me to the Cape Oliva campground and the coast. an easy one, with very little trail elevation to deal with. Many parts of the trail are made up of boardwalks, which can be a bit slick when wet, but make the walking quite easy. It would take me about an hour and 20 minutes to reach the coast. The winds were fairly aggressive on the beach, and that kept the temperatures very cool. Due to that, I wouldn't spend too much time sitting around. After some pictures and a quick snack, I made the journey back to the Jeep. I wouldn't say this would make my top 10 list on this trip, but it was still worth the effort. My day would end early upon finding out that Cape Flattery was closed. I found a campsite along the Seoul River. Day 18 was once again forecast to be a wet one, but the rain would be intermittent. I had several waterfalls on my schedule to visit today. But since it started out with some rain and I wasn't in a hurry to get wet, I decided to take the 37-mile drive all the way to Port Angeles and get some breakfast. As I drove along Crescent Lake, I spotted a beautiful and colorful rainbow stretching across the water. This was something I needed to take a few minutes to enjoy. As I reached the outskirts of Port Angeles, the sun was out, although the clouds were still pretty thick, and I knew this wasn't going to last, and it didn't. After breakfast, I headed back into the Olympic National Park to see Seoul Falls. The rain now was pretty steady. Although I would wait in the parking area to see if it might stop, that didn't happen. After a quick, less than a mile hike that I didn't bother videoing, I arrived at Seoul Falls, an impressive flow of pounding water surging down the Seoul River. Even though it was still raining, I enjoyed setting up my camera and getting a few shots from different vantage points before heading back to the Jeep. My next stop was the ranger station at Barnes Point on Crescent Lake. Here I was met with the sight of deer feeding in the open field as I walked to the trailhead to get to Merrimack Falls. On a drier, less cloudy day, I would have done the longer and somewhat more strenuous hike up to the top of Mount Storm King, which reportedly offered amazing views of the Crescent Lake below. However, on this day I would have to settle for the more gentle trail to Merrimack Falls. As with Seoul Duke, there were plenty of people out and about trying to take in the sights of the Olympic Peninsula, and rain wasn't going to get in the way. Merrimack was another impressive waterfall and worth a short hike, even in the rain. I ended up finding a campsite at the Fairholme Campground on the banks of the Crescent Lake. I was soaking wet from head to toe and the rain did not let up. I ended up in the tent early, just trying to stay dry. Waking up to dry weather was awesome, but it was still a cloudy day. My plan was to head up to Hurricane Ridge, and my hope was that I would be able to get above the cloud cover. After a quick stop into Port Angeles to get a new pair of tri-hiking shoes, I was off once again into Olympic National Park, and I had plenty of company. This was a 17-mile drive and nearly a 5,000-foot ascent to the top. As the serpentine road wound its way up, I quickly got above the clouds. Vistas of the Olympic mountain range sprang up between the trees on my left as I climbed to the visitor center. The visitor center was located on a wide open mountainous area, a mile up in altitude. The views of the surrounding mountains that reach heights just under 8,000 feet were incredible. Unfortunately, given the time of year, there was still significant levels of snow covering the trails, so I had to simply enjoy the sights from the visitor center area itself. With my visit to Hurricane Ridge done, the list of areas I wanted to visit on the Olympic Peninsula was completed, and I was ready for a change. I decided to head back to Port Angeles one last time to reassess my plan. Over lunch, I made the decision to end my visit to the Olympic Peninsula a day early and head over to the North Cascades. With that decision made, I head toward Kingston to camp for the night. This put me in a good position to catch an early ferry to take across Puget Sound to Edmonds in the morning. Given it was Friday on Memorial Day weekend, many of the campgrounds in the area were already booked. Luckily, I found a private campground that had an open spot for the night. My time on the Olympic Peninsula was over.